What's up, guys? How's everyone doing? Welcome back to Darth Matu's Holocron. Today, I'm coming at you with another literary video. We're going to take a look at the five-man band trope, what it is, and how you can apply it to your stories. Before we get started, I just want to say, I really wanted to use actual footage from the shows I'm discussing in order to illustrate my point, but I'm going to have to make do with still images. I apologize in advance. YouTube is an absolute nightmare when it comes to copyright. I mean, they pretty much outright flout the law on it, so there's not much I can do. I am but a humble channel, and I just don't have the time or the energy to fight their algorithm 1,000 times to upload a video without a strike. So, gonna work around it. Anyway, hope you all enjoy. If you do, please like and subscribe. It really helps out, especially when YouTube seems to actively suppress small creators. But without further ado, let's begin. We have talked a decent amount about narrative structure at this point, covering the monomyth, archetypes, and conflict. I'll link those videos in the description below, but today we're going to be diving into the five-man band. Now, the five-man band is a trope. Tropes are simply the use of language to engage in artistic expression. It can be a metaphor or a specific strategy of writing. Maybe tropes in general deserve their own video later on, but for now, let's just understand that the five-man band is a trope that will help you construct your main cast. Avatar: The Last Airbender stands out as one of the best outings in the past few decades to showcase the five-man band. But another example would include Stranger Things. The five-man band is called as such because it usually consists of 5 characters, each one slotting into the role of a specific archetype. The archetypes that are almost always at play within the five-man band are the leader, the lancer, the smart guy, the big guy, and the chick. The leader kind of gives away the game in the name. This person is the head of the group, and they're usually the main character of any given story. The leader can take many shapes. Usually, though, they are driven, confident, in command of themselves, and thus the environment around them. They're usually clean-cut and attractive, and they're usually very charismatic. And yet, despite this, one of the examples I gave earlier flaunts these rules. In Avatar: The Last Airbender, Aang is neither confident nor attractive. He's a child, and in fact combines another trope, fish out of water. Yeah, I think I'm definitely going to need to do a trope-specific video. But it's worth pointing out for now, pretty much the only thing Aang has out of everything I just described is his charisma. That dude makes friends everywhere he goes. What truly matters for the leader is not how they combine the traits mentioned. Indeed, they don't really have to use any of those traits at all. What really matters is that this person is functionally in charge of the group. They are the captain at the wheel, the individual that the other characters in the story follow. Maybe your leader is already in charge of the group, like Commander Rourke in Disney's Atlantis, or maybe your leader and the group meet at some point during the course of your story, like Aang and his friends. Regardless, you're going to have to know how your group came together if you utilize the five-man band, even if your readers will never know. This is important because it helps create an authentic feeling to the relationships between your characters, and usually the way the group comes together is intrinsically tied to the leader. Going back yet again to Avatar: The Last Airbender, the group comes together one by one in order to expressly help Aang with his mission. In the case of Commander Rourke in Atlantis, we can assume that he recruited them much the same way that he tries to recruit Milo. The way that your band came to adhere to the leader likely sets the tempo for the group. Commander Rourke recruited people, which intrinsically places him in direct military-like command. Aang, however, more simply makes friends, and as such, he is less directly in command, and his friends more so follow him out of the sense of loyalty and dedication. These are things that you have to keep in mind as you bring your own leaders into the world. They're going to act as the foundation for the rest of the group, the flavor, if you will. The Lancer is often the second in command. They act as a foil to the leader. Usually they're opposite in some fashion, either in personality, belief, or method. If the leader is a fresh-faced, naive youth, then the Lancer is a grizzled veteran, scarred by many battles. If the leader is an older, experienced elder, then the Lancer is a young newbie at the start of their journey. Again, much like the leader, the exact traits or qualities of the Lancer can be nebulous and molded by the other. What is important is that the Lancer acts as that foil to the leader. To take a slight tangent, a foil is another trope that derives its name from the tiny piece of foil placed behind jewels to increase their shininess. Foils are meant to enhance the characteristics of the character they are bound to, in this case, the leader. Probably the most infamous example of a foil is Batman and the Joker. The two highlight attributes in one another through contrast. This is what the Lancer is meant to do for the leader. The relationship between the two will not be as overtly antagonistic as Batman and the Joker. Remember, the five-man band are all on the same team. However, this does not mean that the Lancer and the leader always have to agree. Indeed, it is an important part of the Lancer's position to act as a check against the leader in some way. Even if the Lancer and the leader are friends and don't actively argue with one another, the leader will know that they can count on the Lancer for unfiltered advice, even the kind of advice that the leader does not want to hear. Examples of Lancers include Zuko in Avatar: The Last Airbender, Will Byers in Stranger Things, or Han Solo in Star Wars. The Lancer might be a bit easier to come up with than the leader. The Lancer necessarily has to be the opposite reflection to the leader in some way. My advice when creating your Lancers would be to remember that no literary device or trope is a set-in-stone rule. It's all more like guidelines. Maybe your Lancer does act as a foil to the leader in terms of a single characteristic, but otherwise your leader and your Lancer are two peas in a pod. Take the example of Will Byers from Stranger Things. Both Will and Mike share the same interests, the same school, the same group of friends, the same fashion sense. The pair hardly ever argue, and in fact, they're fast friends, with Mike risking his life to save Will in the first season. They differ only in that one is extroverted and one is introverted, but this one point of difference is enough to create the leader-Lancer relationship. The smart guy is the third member of the five-man band. This is another name that is fairly self-explanatory. The smart guy is the brain of the group. They do not lead, but rather inform the choices of the leader with raw data or wits. Many of the most iconic characters in fiction are smart guys, like Tony Stark or Sokka from Avatar: The Last Airbender. Smart guys usually fill the role of your stereotypical nerd, but this is not always the case. You can twist the smart guy position by making them more streetwise or earthy, replacing outright smarts with wits earned through experience. The smart guy does not have to completely eschew physical effort either, but they must inform everything they do, including physical activity, with their brain. If you have a smart guy who is scrappy, then they are winning their fights through cleverness and/or guile, not through outright physical strength. The most important aspect of the smart guy is that they use their brain. How they do so is up to the author. You can subvert this trope a bit by making the smart guy less of a Tony Stark and more of a Loki, a trickster who fell in with the leader. They can be a warrior renowned for their strategy. Batman, for example, could easily fill the smart guy role. Maybe your smart guy is gregarious and he gets along great with others, just like Sokka, a far cry from the stereotypical nerd that we imagine as soon as we hear the name of this trope. A good example of another twist on the smart guy would be R2-D2 and C-3PO in Star Wars. These are two individual characters who together as a pair fulfill the needs of the trope. Remember, the execution is what makes or breaks a trope, and defines the skill of the author. The smart guy can be a bit of a challenge because it requires a certain baseline of intelligence in the author. My best advice for writing the smart guy is to take your time with them. Go slow, really think things through. Say their plans out loud to yourself. Things oftentimes sound better in our heads, and if you say it out loud and it sounds dumb, that's probably because it is. You don't have to be Albert Einstein to write the smart guy effectively, but you do have to put a fair amount of forethought into them. Rushing in this regard simply will not do, I can assure you. After the smart guy comes their opposite, the big guy. If the smart guy is the mental aspect of the group, the big guy is the physical aspect. They represent physical strength, durability, and endurance, able to push the rest of the group beyond their physical limits if need be. The big guy is oftentimes the group's best fighter, even outclassing the leader in this regard. The big guy is usually the most simple-minded of the group. This is not to say that they are dumb, only that they're usually more black and white in their thinking. Big guys are the kind who make enemies for life, but conversely, they're also fiercely, unflinchingly loyal to those they deem their friends. They're not stupid, they simply have no time for nonsense, only giving thought to whatever actually needs to be examined. They're usually the first person in the group into a confrontation, and are oftentimes used to set up the villain. Defeating the big guy is a good way to seem imposing and intimidating after all. This tendency to use the big guy as a means to build up the main antagonist is known as the Worf effect, since the titular Klingon gets his legs whooped quite a bit in Star Trek for this very reason. Another good example of the Worf effect in action would be when Thanos kicks the crap out of the Hulk at the beginning of Infinity War. The most important thing to remember about the big guy is that they need not be physically big themselves. Toph in Avatar: The Last Airbender is the physically smallest one in the group, but her strength in earthbending more than makes up for that. It is also worth noting that strength need not only come from things which affect the physical world. Toph also has an extremely strong personality which acts as a wall for the others to bounce off of. This interplay is essential to the group dynamic in the five-man band. Your characters, after all, are not simply cutouts. You want them to interact, have back and forths, to argue and to compromise. Take the episode in Avatar: The Last Airbender where Toph and Sokka are getting sucked into scamming street-side vendors. That entire episode is centered around the back and forth that comes from Toph and Sokka wanting to do a thing, Katara arguing against it, and then all three putting aside their differences to resolve the situation when things finally blow up in their faces. Interaction between characters is key to any story, and the big guy with a strong personality is perfect fuel for that fire. The next and final member of the five-man band is known as the Chick. As you might have guessed from the name, this role is usually taken by a female, though that does not have to be the case. I will repeat this until the day I die, but remember, these tropes are guidelines, not hard rules. All that matters for the Chick is that they exemplify feminine energy. What I mean by that is that the Chick acts as a group's heart. They mediate disputes between the other members and act as the binding agent between the others' disparate personality traits. Going back to the example of Toph and Sokka getting sucked up by scamming, you can clearly see that Katara fills the role of the Chick. She acts like the group mom, warning the others when they are getting ready to make a mistake. But not only that, she is there for Toph and Sokka when they come crawling to her for help, despite the fact that she disagreed with their behavior. Katara is central to resolving that episode's conflict, and that will be something repeated with the Chick. The help the Chick gives need not always be emotional or spiritual either. Princess Leia is a great example of this. She kicks off her entrance into the story, saving the group from their own trouble almost immediately. Luke and Han had bitten off far more than they could chew, after all, and without her seizing the initiative, they never would have escaped the prison block. What matters is that the chick is there to help the others solve their issues. The leader makes decisions for the group, but it is the chick who often deals with the choices made by individual members of the five-man band. Probably the most important thing to remember about the chick, and I want to stress this again, is that they do not need to be female. The chick slot in the five-man band is called as such because it does exemplify feminine energy. And again, that means that the chick has to be nurturing. They have to be someone that the rest of the group knows they can count on no matter what, in any situation. Like a child running to mommy, characters in the five-man band will come to the chick with their problems, even if the chick happens to be a 7-foot-tall, 400-pound berserker Viking that just so happens to have a more sensitive side. Whether or not your character can exemplify that feminine energy is not tied to their biological gender. It's more about personality, about how they carry themselves, about their outlook on life. The chick simply has to care about the individuals in the group as well as for the group as a whole. They have to be willing to put time into the rest of the band's individual problems, even if that means putting their own beliefs aside for a while. A good example of a male chick would be Coach from Left 4 Dead 2. Coach is an enormous man who spends most of his time trying to keep the rest of the group's morale buoyed with jokes or with his own spirit. You can do such things with the chick. Again, the success of a trope is based on the author's execution. But alright guys, that is the structure of the five-man band. Before we close out, I just want to mention again, that these tropes are guidelines, not hard and fast rules. Any of these archetypes within the five-man band can be used on their own or in any number of conversations. You can have more characters than just 5 within a so-called five-man band, and you can even bring in tropes outside the ones mentioned in this video to use within this framework. It really is all up to your creativity. It is important to understand these tropes and how they work, because once you understand them, you can break them down, switch them up, mold them to suit your own purpose. Tropes like the five-man band or the monomyth can help you to inform your writing, and they do give basic frameworks for what can be considered a quote-unquote good narrative. But they are not the end-all be-all. Once again, execution truly matters, which is why it's important to not only learn about this stuff, but to try it out. A writer writes, after all. And so, at the end of this video, I'm going to try something new. I'm going to offer up a challenge to the aspiring writers out there. Write a short story of any length using the five-man band. You can find a link to the Holocron, my personal Discord, in the description below. Try to use the five-man band in a story, and then come and share that story with the rest of us. We've got a bunch of writers in there who would love to read and critique. Anyway, that's enough out of me. If you found this video informative or enjoyable, then please leave a like and subscribe. It really helps out the channel, and you made it this far anyway, right? But okay guys, take care of yourselves out there, be well, and as always, may the Force break your chains.